I'm thinking of it as like the lessons I've learned in my life as a woman with dieting. If
Oh,
you
exactly.
tell me, you can't eat carbs, I think about carbs all the time. I want to eat them
Exactly.
with every meal. Like it's like give me all
Yeah.
the carbs. And then it's like, okay, maybe I'll go a week without eating carbs. And then when that week is up, I'm like, I'm going to binge on carbs. And I feel like
Yeah.
money is the same way. If you tell me you can't spend money this week, I
Mhm.
am now going to just look at all of the things that cost money. and
Yeah.
and then the second, you let me spend money, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go blow it on something silly just because I've been deprived. So,
Exactly. Exactly. I've made that connection multiple times. That's what I've said. Budgeting is like dieting and it doesn't work. It works short term and then it doesn't work long term. And then exactly, you're back like, drinking a bottle of wine and eating all the chocolates in the box after your diet's
yeah.
over, right?
Welcome, Angie, the money coach. I'm so excited to have you on this show. We met at a networking event, and right away, I was just drawn to you because I feel like you have a lot of really good information to share and some great knowledge around working with our finances. I also love that you're an entrepreneur and you've built your own coaching business. So I'm really excited to have you here today. Welcome, Angie. Maybe you could start by just telling us a little bit of your kind of elevator pitch or your background
Mhm.
story of what it is that you have to offer and what you do exactly.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. So I think what actually ends up happening is people are drawn to me because I don't present as like a stuffy financial person. And that's because I'm just a regular person like everyone else. I was a high school finance teacher. And what happened was I had parents constantly asking me for financial advice because there's not a lot of unbiased financial advice out there. Usually when you're getting financial advice, it's from like, your bank or your financial advisor, and they may be trying to sell you a product or service at the end of that advice. And so my students, I taught them personal finance, and their parents would write me emails like, could you expand on this? Or could you help me with this? And so I started to recognize there was a need out there, but there's a bit of a stumbling block because I had what I would call the golden handcuffs of having a good job, good pay, good pension. And I was like, how summer's off, don't forget that one. And I'm like, how do I move and transition from teaching to self-employment? And so we started to actually overhaul our own money and our own cash flow issues because I felt stuck financially, quite honestly. So what ended up happening was we went through and did a cash flow overhaul and found $2,000 a month that we were spending on things we really didn't care about, which was kind of crazy. So we took that $2,000, which was about half of my paycheck, and I went part-time in teaching so that I could start my business. And then it just flourished from there. So many people want that unbiased advice. And now I'm doing this, loving it. And in the meantime, we even bought an Airbnb in Mont Tremblant. So honestly, I went through the process myself. So that's why I feel people are a little bit comfortable with me because I'm not coming from a place of judgment. I'm coming from a place of, hey, we can do so much more with our money if we have a plan.
So you knew you wanted to be an entrepreneur and you're like, okay, I need to make a plan here. I need to be able to actually
Mhm.
support myself. So you started by looking at your own finances and your budget. Now that $2,000 a month, tell me more about that. What were you spending $2,000 on that you could
Oh
cut out?
goodness. Oh goodness. I can't tell you. It's illegal. No, I'm joking. What happened was a lot of people are spending way beyond their means. We weren't because we had a comfortable income situation, two income household. But then I looked, we were wasting a lot of money. So we weren't going into a lot of debt or anything like that. But what was happening is we were spending a lot on retail, a lot of extra on food, our entertainment costs, just it all adds up really, really quickly when you're not paying attention. And so one of the things I like to tell new entrepreneurs, because I do work with a lot of small business owners, is actually assessing your personal finances is the first thing to do before you even jump into your business. Because what's going to happen is it's going to inform you of how much you need to make in your business to break even, to survive. Because a lot of times what I think happens is we love what we're doing so much and we just want to do it. And we're not thinking of how it's going to impact our home lives if things aren't maybe going well, or we don't know the number we need to bring home to really make it a success. And you probably know that a ton of business owners unfortunately fail in the first number of years. And usually it's because of cash flow.
That makes sense. And that's something that
Mhm.
I'm learning because I only took the leap less than a year ago now to be a
Mhm.
full-time entrepreneur. And I kind of am more of a like faith-based spiritual dreamer. I am
Right.
not a numbers person. So I
Mhm.
didn't sit down and review everything and make that chart. I just was like, you know what? I know if I go all in energetically, I'm going to be supported in that. But what I'm
Mhm.
learning is, there's so many ebbs and flows with entrepreneurship. And I'm trying to adjust my budgeting and my financing around, those monies where there those months where those months where you do make the monies, where the money is
Mhm.
good. You get excited because you see those numbers go up, but then what you don't necessarily account for are, maybe the next month or the next couple months where
Mhm.
things are not good and you're not bringing in that income flow. So maybe what advice do you have to an entrepreneur on ways that we can kind of try to keep things balanced or not panic when that month rolls around where we don't make money as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, and that's the reality of every single starting business owner, right? That's just how it is. And I think the first thing is we need to know your rock bottom number. We need to know that number that you need to be taking home on a monthly basis to break even at home. And then what typically I do is with starting entrepreneurs, if they're making more than that in a month, amazing. We're going to set that money aside for those really slim months. And that's where most people do not do that, because oftentimes what we get excited, we're like, oh, now we're making X amount, that means we're going to always make X amount, and then a recession hits or whatever, the ebbs and flows of the seasons of our business, right? And so realistically we have to be setting that money aside. It for those from those excess months, we need to set it aside for those deficit months. And so I don't really believe in budgets, so this is a whole other thing that's going to come up, but I like the anti-budget approach because budgets fail for 79% of people. And so one of the reasons is they're reactive versus being proactive. And so when I'm talking to a business owner, we're using your expenses and your numbers to get a sense of what you need to make, but then we're building a cash flow system so that you're also saving for your taxes, because that's one that throws entrepreneurs off when the tax man wants his money and we don't have any, right? But then we also take a look at your expenses and we say, well, we're overspending in the expense department. That tends to be a big one for small business owners as well, is that expenses, we justify every workshop, every retreat. This is going to be the thing that breaks us through. And unfortunately, what tends to break us is our cash flow, and we don't pay attention to our cash flow. That's the thing that's going to kind of put the nail in the coffin.
Awesome. That's, yeah, a lot of that really resonates with what I've been learning on my entrepreneurial journey for sure.
Yeah, me too.
So, what's a good starting plan then for somebody who's
Yeah.
wanting to step into this?
Yeah, so funnily enough, I run free workshops, and what I would suggest is I do one called the anti-budget. And what it's doing is looking at your personal expenses and really giving you a very clear picture of what you are going to need to bring home on a monthly basis, and then how we can proactively make sure you're not spending more than that, because that's also what gets us in trouble. And so typically with budgets, as I said, they're proactive. We type our numbers into our spreadsheet and we look at them at the end of the month, and then we go, oh, we went over. Well, it's too late now. Like, we've already gone over, right? So we can't go back in time. So what I do in the anti-budget that's different is we take a look at your income, we subtract your fixed expenses. So it would be like your mortgage, your car payment, things that we cannot change. Then we subtract our financial obligations, which can be a lot of fun, actually. So one of my obligations is vacation savings, because we like to go on a nice vacation every year. Christmas savings, because I'm a Christmas addict. We also have kids' activities, retirement savings. We subtract that stuff as well. And then we get a pile of money at the end. And what we do with the anti-budget is we divide that pile of money into a weekly amount, call it the weekly spendable, and that's for food, retail, and entertainment. And to give you an idea, at my house is $700 a week based off of our numbers. We can spend it however we want within those categories. And as long as we stick to $700 a week, the rest of all of our financial obligations, our house, our debt payments, everything is taken care of. And so what happens is it really reduces you to taking care of one thing. So all we have to worry about is that $700 a week. We don't have to worry about if the gas prices went up. We don't have to worry about any of that crap. We're just worried about that $700 a week. And then what ends up happening is we are building our financial goals into that cash flow plan, that anti-budget, and then we're actually getting somewhere with our money.
I love that. I really
Mhm.
love that. Now, tell me more about what got you into this work because you clearly have a lot of information. You went to school
Mhm.
to be a teacher, you were teaching
Mhm.
this. What was it like for you growing up? What has your relationship been with money? What made you do this?
Yeah, so I was a finance teacher and I taught personal finance and I took finance at university, but I did not want to be in corporate. It's not my gig. I don't like it. I don't like to be stuffy. I like to be very no BS and straightforward and helping people. And so I got into teaching. And realistically, my mom was a great advocate for taking care of your finances and a woman taking care of their finances. And so that has come through really strongly for me because a lot of times what I see is the women are taking care of the daily finances, but a lot of times the men are kind of the strategic, I would say, operators in the background. And so I wanted to be able to offer services to couples so they could get on the same page and both participate in all of the financial means at their house so that they could actually maximize their money. Because what you see, if we have one person over here dealing with the day to day and one person over here dealing with the strategic things that are going on, like maybe an investment property or retirement planning or whatever that would be, if they're not talking to one another, they're certainly not maximizing their money. And so that's kind of where my role came in. And I also really learned a lot from my mom about how to be a strong woman. And when I went into the banks, I wouldn't listen to what they would say most of the time. I would be thinking about it critically and be saying, "Oh, what are they trying to say? What are they trying to sell me? And what are they not saying?" And so I think I learned a ton from my mom just in her strong personality and her, I mean, inability to just kind of listen to what everyone was trying to tell you, especially when it came to selling us things, right? And so we tend to have this trust in our banks and our financial system that, again, they're big businesses, they are not our friends. So we have to be self advocates.
Yeah, I learned that the hard way. I was talked by my bank convinced me when mortgage rates were really low a few years ago, they convinced me to, lock in for a shorter term at that low rate. Meanwhile, my gut was telling me like, no, we should be locking in for a 5 year, like lock this in for as long as we can. The rates are good. And I remember saying that and to this day, I still get mad. These are one of the things that I like think about when I'm trying to sleep at night.
Yeah.
Letting the bank, letting this man talk me out of it and say, well, actually, you should just go for the 3 year and convince me. And then guess what happened? After the 3 year went up, the rates went up, and my payments now have gone up like $700 a month because of the rate change. And it's like, so I am all for empowerment and that really was something I needed to go through to wake me up to the fact that yeah, you can't trust the banks, and I do need to do some research. And now when I make changes or updates to my mortgage and do anything with the bank, I really do try to educate myself on it. But to be honest, I'm really just not a numbers person. Like I think
Yeah.
you have that personality or that interest, or that it's like a part of your brain that you can do. And for me, if when people kind of start talking numbers, I'm just like, well, like I my
Yeah,
brain goes
totally.
elsewhere. But it's important, and I recognize the value in what you're doing, and I really do think that there's a lot of these things that I need to be implementing in my life, in my personal budgeting, but not the anti-budget, I guess.
Right.
Looking at it. So when you look at somebody's finances, when you start
Mhm.
working with someone, do you kind of go through their bank statements with them and then you have conversations about it? How does that work?
Yeah, so I actually have an analyst that analyzes 4 months worth of bank statements, credit card statements, mortgage information, investments, insurance, all of the things. And so what we're looking for is to give you your numbers. So it's done for you because most people, when I say, let's go look at your numbers, they're like, I'm not going to do that. And then the process ends, right? And so the analyst does the numbers. I get it. She did my numbers. So like, I'm all in. I don't want to do that work either. So she analyzes the numbers, she gives me the numbers and shows me the plan. And oftentimes, what's happening when we get those numbers is we will see things like if people are paying too much for their insurance, maybe they're paying for credit card balance insurance or line of credit insurance, which typically isn't a great product. We will bring that up. I had one client who had an RESP for her child, which was amazing, but it was sitting in a savings account earning 0.5%. And nobody at her bank had ever told her she could be earning, 5, 7, 9% on that money. And so we will throw up some red flags as well. So we are building your anti-budget, but we're also saying, hey, heads up, what's happening over here with this item isn't in your best interest. And so that's what's really nice about me, because again, I'm not selling any of these products. So if I'm telling you this is not a great use of your money, it's not a great use of your money. Like straight up, there's no other reason for me to say that aside from the fact that I'm trying to help, right? And so I think what ends up happening is a lot of people get a lot of value out of knowing they can just ask me any kind of money question and I will give them the advice without any strings attached, which is it's rare, to be honest.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Now, getting into offering these things as an entrepreneur, I think a lot, like I've learned one of the biggest hurdles I've had and that I hear other like clients and people that I've worked with have is, when you're putting together your initial offers, the biggest struggle is like, how do I price this? How do I position this? How do I sell this? So can you tell me a little bit about your coaching and how you decided to put together your programs and price your offers, what you base that on from a financial perspective?
Yeah, well, a lot of it has to do with going through the anti-budget and figuring out how much I need to make on a monthly basis and reverse engineering out. Okay, if I need to bring home $6,000 a month or whatever it may be, how many clients do I need to see to bring that amount home? And how many hours of my time am I taking working with that client and on their project, right? On their specific numbers. And so it's a reverse engineering process. And I would suggest that most people should be doing that, because oftentimes what I see is a lot of entrepreneurs that are underpricing their services. And what ends up happening is they need to work like 60, 70 hours a week and be completely booked in order to just cover their household expenses. And so sometimes the message is a hard one, and I've had to deliver it to myself as well. I've had other types of ideas. I'm like, oh, maybe I'll do this for a group program or this or that. And I'm like, at the end of the day, I'm making $10 an hour or whatever that is. I'm like, that is not worth my time. And so we have to value ourselves as well, and we have to value our time. And I think to do that, if you reverse engineer that out, that's really helpful.
I love that. Now, did you have to overcome some imposter syndrome and limiting beliefs to get there? Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, maybe a smidgen. Honestly, I think because I was a teacher, I overcame those in teaching. So the first 5 years of teaching was like a life lessons 101. And once you get past that, a lot of the similar things, coaching and teaching are very similar. A lot of those things come up again. But yes, you're new in the space. So whenever you're new in a space, there's a little bit of imposter syndrome, but it's gone. Like oftentimes I'll look and I'll be like, maybe I'm underpricing myself. So I have to reassess. Like, I kind of reassess on a 6-month basis, and think about that. Because when I look at return on investment, which is really what people should be looking at, my clients are typically getting, 2-3 times their investment back in the 6-month time frame that we're working together. And then that plan is still working for them over and over and over again, all the way down the line. So when I look at that, it's like, okay, maybe some adjustment needs to be made. So I'm still not perfect, and I'm constantly reassessing that as well.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Awesome. Thank you. What other advice could you give to somebody who is wanting to start out, like who recognizes that they have a skill and a service that they can provide to help others? What advice would you give them? How do you recommend that they start out?
Yeah, great question. You have to leap. Unfortunately, there's never going to be the perfect moment. I think a lot of people are waiting for that perfect time to come. You learn so much by doing, which I'm sure you already know. So you have to kind of get in there, get dirty, and then you will learn. So the quicker you kind of leap into it, the better off you are, I believe. But I also think in my case, I was able to do part-time teaching and get in, and that provided me with just that little bit of stability as well. So if you're able to maybe segue your way in while still having a bit of stable income, it takes a lot of the pressure off, because as most people know, in business, there are sales. And I feel like when people are pressured to make sales, it doesn't happen, right? So if you're able to kind of have a little bit of stable income in the background while you get your business up and going, it's probably going to take some of that pressure off of you and will help your process. The other thing I would suggest is you want to start with a cash flow system right off the bat. And that is for your business. And so there's a great book called Profit First. I did not write it. I do not get any money from this. I I always say that because I'm not an affiliate for anything. So someone one time said, you should be an affiliate for this and this and that. I said, well, then I'm not an unbiased money coach. So he's just a great source of information. It's called Profit First, and his name is Mike Michalowicz. And what he talks about is setting up different accounts for your business, different bank accounts in order to organize your business funds. And I love it. I use it myself. A lot of my clients use it as well. And I think it's a $20 book. So well worth it and not that boring. You always think that these books are going to be boring. He's actually quite good. And his audiobook is great.
Awesome. That's great. I love reading. I've taught myself everything through books for the most
Right.
part. Yeah, so I'm definitely going to check that out. So thank you. Now you mentioned, the whole sales part. How do
Mhm.
you find as a coach, like what works for you for your own marketing and putting yourself out there and attracting clients? Like especially in those early days, how were you able to get it to take off?
So I'm going to be 100% transparent. I was terrible at the beginning because I've never been in a sales role in my life. I was a teacher, I'm an educator, and I was putting pressure on myself in the meeting. And then I recognized that sales really is just forming a relationship with someone in that meeting. And I just realized I do have something. I think knowing that the value of what you offer is really important. And as I started to change people's lives going through the program, it became very easy to have these conversations and just say, this is what this will do for you. So if you want it, great. And if you don't, that's totally your vibe. You do your thing. And this is what I have to offer. And so making it a lot more about these are the results I can get you. And if you're not ready for it, here I'll be, because the worst thing that I can do is try and convince someone to be a part of my coaching program. If they're not ready, it's a waste of my time and it's a waste of their time. Right. And so any kind of convincing energy, I just don't have it. And so I'm just here. I'm telling you what I'm about. I'm asking you questions to see if I can help. And sometimes I send people away. So my husband makes fun of me. He's like, you're the worst salesperson ever. You just provided them with you said, come to my free workshop, do my free whatever. I said, yeah. And then what happens is they trust me. And if they want more support down the line, I'm here. And if all they do is get the free resources, but it makes a difference to their life, awesome.
Yeah, I love that. I definitely believe in giving things of value as a
Mhm.
form of marketing and sales, and giving it away for free too. I do the same thing, the free workshops and everything,
Mhm.
and they're great. And I tell my clients to do that too when I'm helping people build their brands and build their own marketing strategies. You have to give people things that are of value, and that is how you establish yourself as that trusted authority or person that they want to work with. So more specifically, where do you find your clients the most? Like where do you hang out online? Where do you get
Yeah.
people?
Yeah, so I just got my website up and running in May. And so it's been mostly Instagram actually. And I think Instagram works for me because I do leave a lot of free tips. So I did one the other day on how to get your next car, like how to negotiate it. And I had a ton of response on that. And so I'll drop little, value bombs or whatever you want to call them. And then people will reach out eventually and they'll tell me, I've been following you for a year and now I want to have a chat. And so it's just being consistent with adding that value in lots of places. So it's usually Instagram and a lot of referrals. So I've been getting a lot more of that recently with clients I've worked with in the past, have told their friend about me, and then they told their friend about me, and off we go, which I love because it's not easy to talk about money. So if someone is telling someone else, hey, I went to this money coach and they did an awesome job and these were my results, then I'm like, whoa, they must really have had a great experience. And so that person comes in pretty easily because they have their friend that they trust talking about money and talking about kind of a taboo subject. And then they're coming to talk to me. And at that point, they're pretty much ready to go.
Yeah. Now let's talk about that. It's
Mhm.
not easy to talk about money.
Mhm.
What do you think are kind of the psychological reasons behind that? Why do we carry so much? It's like maybe shame,
Mhm.
or from a young age we're told, oh, don't talk about money, don't talk. But then as an entrepreneur you're out there like, well, what the hell, I need to talk to somebody about money. I need to know how much to
Yeah.
charge. I need to know how much,
Yeah.
what people are paying, what the going rates are. So what do you have to say about that?
I mean, I think it's a generational thing. I think it's getting a bit better. Like what I see in my classroom is that the younger kids want to talk about money because they want to learn. So my message has always been, we shouldn't be hard on ourselves. We didn't really get taught, or most of us did not get taught. And so if we make a mistake, yep, we're going to learn from that mistake, dust ourselves off and get going. But how are you going to learn better if you're not willing to talk about it? Right. And so the way I have a group program running right now, and it's a group of ladies who are all wonderful. They've made their money mistakes. So have I. And by talking about those things and working through some of that stuff together, we learn from like, 10 people versus just having to go through everything ourselves. And so I feel like it's a generational thing. Like my parents wouldn't have talked about money outwardly to groups of people. And I feel like it's starting to become a little more acceptable based on the fact that people want to educate themselves. There's a lot more people that want to learn about investing. They want to learn about how to do more with their money. And so I think that's one of the things about social media that's kind of been good, because people will talk about it on social media and it brings up the topic. And then that topic, I mean, some of it's not correct, what they say on social media, but but at least the topic, it gets the conversation flowing and drops that shame and guilt around money.
Awesome. What would you say is kind of the most common pain point that you encounter with your clients that you work with? Like what do you think gets people into a situation where they're wanting to work with you?
Yeah, cash flow chaos. So it can be in business or personal. And what that means is kind of what you were talking about earlier, the ebbs and flows of income. And then what are we going to do this month if we don't have the income? Are we borrowing from our credit card, our line of credit? Are we accumulating debt? It gets scary for people when we get into that situation. Or as a business owner, how am I going to pay for this next bill that's coming in? And so I think what happens is people start to ride that roller coaster of cash flow chaos. And at some point it becomes exhausting and they want off. And so once they get to that point of being like, enough is enough, that's typically when they call me. And interestingly enough, people often will think a money coach is for low income earners. Absolutely not. The majority of my clients make good money. And at the end of the month, they're like, where the hell did my money go? And so they're sick of being like, why am I working so hard? And at the end of the month, there's nothing to show. Sure, I paid my mortgage, but now I'm going into debt over here or whatever it may be. And they're just fed up.
Absolutely. Can you give us like the biggest piece of advice that you have for when you're wanting to get control over your cash? Like what's one thing that we could all just do right now that
Yeah.
would help us in this moment?
You can use cash. So people always like, cash. Yeah, if you use cash, you reduce your spending by 25% without even thinking about it. So that being said, yeah, that's research. I didn't make this up. So, but that being said, you're not using cash for your mortgage, right? So you're using cash for specific items. Typically, it would be retail, food, and entertainment. So I had someone actually say, "Oh, well, I don't spend any more at the grocery store because I don't use cash." And I had one word for them, and it was Costco. Because people head into Costco and they're throwing down $300-400. If you had to hand over $300-400 $100 bills, you would think about it. And so it tends to really retract our spending. I have clients that have actually reduced their spending by 50% using cash, but the average is 25.
I think I want to try that now.
Do
Definitely.
it.
Yeah, definitely.
You feel like really, really high roller when you're like rolling out this cash too. Like I'm at the golf course, I'm like, here's $100. I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, I'm famous. Yes.
I usually because I'm a big energy person. So
Yes.
I always try to leave cash in my wallet, even though I never use
Mm,
cash, but because I believe money attracts money. So it's just
yeah.
for the energy of like opening up my wallet, seeing there's money there, and then it's like, hey,
Love
more
it.
money is welcome. Come hang out, come join. So
Yeah.
do you find that do you feel any kind of energetic connections towards your money? Do you find when you're in a good place, yeah.
Absolutely. I love the energy side of money as well. I'm not sure if you've read, there's a book called The Soul of Money. It's by Lynn
No.
Twist. Okay, look into it. It's great. Another energy
Okay.
kind of vibe. And honestly, like when my money is not chaotic, it attracts more money as well. And that's why, like, I was telling my husband, because we were talking about how we handle our money. He's like, we never look at our money. No, I look at my money twice a month. Like,
Yeah.
I just know it's going to be there. I have a positive feeling about my money. We have a system in place. And once we've calmed it down, everything just calms down. And it just feels very positive. And you're right. Money flows in nicely when you have a nice, calm environment. And I have my $700 cash in my wallet. So maybe that's why the money's flowing to me. I kind of like that idea.
Yeah, and I genuinely believe that money is energy. And if you're
Mhm.
spending it wisely or spending it in a way where you're being generous, I
Mhm.
think that that can really come back to you as well. Like it's just an energy
Absolutely.
exchange. And that's what I try to tell myself too when I'm pricing my offers and doing things is like what you said, recognizing the value that you give and how it really can help someone and make a difference, but also recognizing that that's what it is it's an energy exchange.
I want to go back to what you said about that too. One of the reasons I don't like budgeting is because it gets people penny pinching and being really, they're not generous, right, with their money because they're really concerned and worried about their money. And then when you have a system like the anti budget, it's proactive. And what you do is you actually put more of your money towards the things you care about. And so when you're setting your financial obligations, I said before, we love vacation. So we spent like $20,000 on vacation this year, but we had the money pre saved and ready to go. And it feels like when you put your money towards the things that you value, you get more of it, right? And so that's exactly the same things that you're talking about, that positive energy and that flow of money. I 100% agree with it. And I feel like the budgeting thing is kind of like the opposite. It's that scarcity mindset. And with the anti budget, it's like, oh, what do we want to have in abundance? We're going to put our money towards what we care about, and then we're going to reap the benefits of that.
It's so true, and the scarcity mindset is so real because I'm married. I've been with my partner for years, and I think that's probably one of the most common causes of divorce, right? Money.
Mm-hmm.
People having
Yep.
conflicting beliefs about money, and we do run into that issue a lot of times. But I really do believe in that with the whole scarcity mindset of like there's times where my husband will say, "Well, we don't have money for that," and I'm like, "Don't say that. Don't use those
Yeah.
words. Don't say that. It's just we have to reframe it. We have to look at it differently. We have to speak about it differently." And it's yeah, it's powerful. But what you said too with the whole scarcity mindset thing and the anti-budget, it just I'm thinking of it as like the lessons I've learned in my life as a woman with dieting. If
Oh,
you
exactly.
tell me, you can't eat carbs, I think about carbs all the time. I want to eat them
Exactly.
with every meal. Like it's like give me all the carbs. And then it's like, okay, maybe I'll go a week without eating carbs. And then when that week is up, I'm like, I'm going to binge on carbs. And I feel like
Yeah.
money is the same way. If you tell me you can't spend money this week, I am now going to just look at all of the things that cost money. and
Yes.
and then the second, you let me spend money, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go blow it on something silly just because I've been deprived. So,
Exactly. Exactly. I've made that connection multiple times. That's what I've said. Budgeting is like dieting and it doesn't work. It works short term and then it doesn't work long term. And then exactly, you're back like, drinking a bottle of wine and eating all the chocolates in the box after your diet's
yeah.
over, right? And you've
Yeah.
undone any of the positives. There was a no spend or no buy challenge that was like trending on TikTok in the summer. And someone asked me my opinion. And so I talked about my opinion on Instagram and I was like, no, I'm like, you're going to not buy for a month and you're going to write all the things down you want to buy. And then the next month you're going to go like and spend double, right? So same thing. Restriction does not lead to any kind of long lasting change.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's so true. Thank you. So, before we leave, can you just
Mm.
share how someone can work with you? I know you said you have a workshop coming up in November,
Yes.
but I mean, people can be listening to this at any time.
Sure.
So, what's the easiest way to get in touch with you and maybe kind of talk to you, get to know you
Mhm.
about if you're the right fit to help somebody?
Sure. So honestly, I would go on Instagram and check me out on Instagram because I do drop a lot of content on there with great free tips. So who doesn't want to save more money and, maximize their money? So go on to Instagram. It's angieross.moneycoach. And then I do offer a lot of free workshops, typically kind of every few months. So I'll talk about those on Instagram. And then for anyone that does want to chat in person, I have free 30-minute consults. And half the time I'm just giving away free tips and talking about, different ways you can maximize your money. And so they can find that on my Instagram in my bio link. They can book a call.
Amazing. Well, thank
Yeah.
you, Angie. I really appreciate you sharing your story with us and giving some great valuable advice there. You've definitely made me rethink how I'm going to approach money, and I'm going to read those books that you've recommended as well because I
I'll
feel
do
like
it.
that's going to be a game changer for me.
And I'm going
So,
to and use cash and let me know how it goes because I think you'll be
yeah.
shocked.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
believe it because I do have a hard time parting with cash. And that whole idea makes sense to me because I
Mhm.
really don't want to just hand it over. I think having the visual like exercise of
Yes.
doing that would really benefit me. So thank you. I'm really grateful for you, Angie.
Oh, of course, you
And I
too. Thank
hope
you.
that people can check out your stuff and benefit from everything that you have to offer because I definitely believe in it.